Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about all of the matchups that we all should be keeping an eye on for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Week 16 matchup versus the Detroit Lions. So without further ado, let's get into it. Started off with the first matchup that I think that we should keep an eye on, which is going to be the Buccaneers pass rush versus the Lions offensive line. It's no secret the Detroit Lions have struggled a pretty decent amount this year. One of the main contributing factors to that is their offensive line has not been the best in most situations, I guess I would say. Now, on the flip side, the Buccaneers pass rush has been blitzing everybody. Basically the entire season, the Buccaneers pass rush has just been blitzing as much as they possibly can. I still think that they are the #1 blitzing team in the league. Devin White's about to get double-digit sacks, potentially, if he can finish the season strong. There are a couple of other guys on there as well who could also finish with double-digit sacks very easily along with Devin White. So, you think of guys like Devin White, a couple of other guys, Levante David and Ndamukong Suh, Will Golston, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. All these guys can apply pressure to the quarterback, and they are dealing with what is a pretty banged up and pretty just not good Lions offensive line right now. They are good in some regards in certain areas. For example, the Lions center is an absolute beast. He was playing with a fractured throat, which I didn't even think that injury was possible, let alone playing through something like that. So they have some warriors on that Lions offensive line, but I still give the edge to the Buccaneers pass rush. Let's see if the pass rush can get some pressure on the Lions quarterback, which, speaking of that Lions quarterback, the next matchup I want us all to keep an eye on is going to be Matthew Stafford versus the Buccaneers secondary. And I'll just go ahead and say this right now. I think Matthew Stafford is a highly underrated quarterback. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the reports and rumors out there that the Lions are considering moving on from Matthew Stafford. And if that's the case, whichever team Matthew Stafford ends up on, I have no doubt in my mind that that team would be getting a top 15 quarterback in this league. I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say. Stafford can make all the throws. He still has got plenty of yardage. He can still get some good touchdowns and keep his interception numbers low. I'm just calling it as I see it, okay? Matthew Stafford's a pretty decent quarterback, and if you underestimate him and if you don't show up prepared for a game against the Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford can carve apart your secondary, not with ease, but he is capable of putting up a very good stat line and a very good game for the Detroit Lions. So the Buccaneers secondary, they have struggled at certain points this season. Pretty much since the midway point of the year, they have been very up and down. I would even argue to say probably a little bit more down than up. Sean Murphy-Bunting has struggled at certain points. Jamel Dean has dealt with injuries. Carlton Davis has struggled a little bit, not too much. I still think he is far and above the best cornerback on this team, but he has also struggled with injuries. And going back to Sean Murphy-Bunting, he has also had to deal with some nagging injuries as well, per Todd Bowles in a recent press conference. So this secondary, the cornerbacks, they're a little bit banged up, and they've also struggled from time to time. The safeties, Mike Edwards, Antoine Winfield Jr., Jordan Whitehead, they've cooled off considerably after the first half of the season. They're still playing decent football, but not, in my opinion, anywhere near as where they were playing at the first half of the season. Antoine Winfield Jr. did have a nice pass breakup in that Falcons game in the end zone, but I feel like he's been relatively quiet, from game to game in recent memory than what I remember seeing from him earlier on in the season. Jordan Whitehead, I feel, has been good this season, but again, not anywhere near the splash play level that I'm used to him seeing. And then Mike Edwards has had a couple of good moments, but he's not getting a ton of playing time. So the point is that this secondary could get, definitely some yards thrown on them and some touchdowns thrown on them if they underestimate a guy like Matthew Stafford and they don't show up prepared for this football game. So fingers crossed that they will be able to show up, be ready to play against a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, because if they're not careful, things could get relatively ugly. The next matchup that we're going to be paying attention to is going to be Leonard Fournette versus the Detroit Lions run defense, which right now I believe ranks 29th in the league in terms of rushing defense. Now, I will be talking about this in a later video, but Leonard Fournette is slated to be the starting running back yet again for this upcoming game on Saturday for the Bucs, as Ronald Jones is out with an injury. In that game most recently versus the Falcons, Fournette, I believe he had 14 carries for 50 yards, maybe 60 yards, but he did have 2 goal line touchdowns, which sweet, let's keep on using him in regards to goal line opportunities, and I will talk about this later, but I do want to see Leonard Fournette get going more, especially against what is right now, statistically, not a very good run defense that they have going on in Detroit. I feel like if you give Leonard Fournette 20 touches or 20 carries in this game, he can get you around 100 scrimmage yards, which I think is very solid for a running back, and he can even still get you a couple of touchdowns as well. So, Leonard Fournette, I hope he has a big game against what is right now a pretty soft Lions run defense. Next matchup we are going to be paying attention to is going to be Mike Evans versus the Lions secondary. I don't know if Mike Evans would be going up against Jeffrey Okudah. I'm not sure if he's dealing with injuries or something along those lines. He might. I'm just completely unsure. But the Lions secondary is also not very good this year. They are, I believe, 27th, I think, in terms of overall yards per game given up for passing yards. So that's not good at all. I believe they're either one above or one below the Buccaneers, which they need to improve on that, guys. But overall, I'm putting Mike Evans here because I feel like Mike Evans is still on pace. Well, he's not on pace. He's still on the path, hopefully, for 1,000 yards to finish out the season. I think he needs somewhere like 100, over 100-something yards in this game to have a chance to go ahead and try and get that record in week 17. So one of the biggest reasons I put Mike Evans on here is because he's still on that path to 1,000 yards receiving for the season. He would break the Randy Moss's record, and he would have that record all by himself, and it seems like that wouldn't be broken anytime soon. So yeah, let's see how Mike Evans does. I think he usually plays pretty decent versus the Lions, so maybe this will be a similar thing. Fingers crossed for that. But finally, guys, the last matchup that we are going to be paying attention to is going to be Lions running back DAndre Swift versus this Buccaneers run defense. And I, again, am a huge fan of DAndre Swift, the running back. I thought that he would be a great piece for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rushing attack before they added all the guys that they added. In the NFL draft, the Lions did end up selecting DAndre Swift, and so far he's been very good for them this year. When he's been able to play, he's been very solid. When he hasn't been able to play, they have missed him a considerable amount. He didn't really get going until, I want to say, probably after the first month of the season, but after that he's been absolutely electric, both as a runner and as a receiver as well. So the Buccaneers do need to be careful. They still have the best, or one of the best, rushing defenses in the entire NFL. I know they had some problems with Dalvin Cook, but after that, they got right back on track. So I don't expect the Lions to run a ton at this Buccaneers run defense because that just hasn't worked for many teams at all, again, besides the Minnesota Vikings, but I do expect them to use DAndre Swift a lot in the passing game. And I will say that I've noticed that the Buccaneers don't do amazing with receiving backs. They don't do terrible by any means, but they have struggled at times to cover backs who can catch the ball and be a receiving threat in their opponent's offensive game plans. You know, we've seen it with Alvin Kamara. We've seen it with other guys like Austin Eckler before he suffered his injury and was knocked out of that Chargers game. Mike Davis has presented some problems for the Buccaneers in the past whenever they've played the Panthers, and Christian McCaffrey as well, but, you know, he hasn't played a ton this season. But the point is that if the Buccaneers linebackers aren't careful, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Devin White, Levante David, if they're not careful with a receiving threat like DAndre Swift, he can get some chunk yardages on them, and he can maybe even get a touchdown or two in the receiving game if they aren't careful. So I would imagine they would probably put either Devin White or Levante David. I would probably assume Devin White, so that way Levante David can focus on covering TJ Hawkinson, the Lions tight end, who is a very solid tight end in his own right. And if that is the case, we'll see how Devin White does. He has struggled in pass coverage so far this year in certain situations. Same with Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul, but I don't expect them to be phenomenal at pass coverage. So yeah, that's kind of another concern there. How will the Buccaneers deal with a dual threat running back like DAndre Swift? In the run game, I'm not so much concerned, but in the receiving game, that's where you start to, you know, bring up some questions as to, ooh, you know, can they cover DAndre Swift? And if they try and cover DAndre Swift too much, is that going to open up opportunities for a guy like TJ Hawkinson? You know, those are the concerns that I would have in a matchup like that. But guys, with that being said, that is going to be it for this video in terms of all the matchups that I think that we should all keep an eye on. What did you guys think? What are some other matchups that you all think that we should all be keeping an eye on for this upcoming game versus the Detroit Lions? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. We're almost done with the season, guys. The Buccaneers are 9-5, 2 games left before we start playoff football, and the Buccaneers will most definitely be in that playoff football picture when the time does roll around. And I'm very excited for it. I know you guys are all probably very, very excited for it as well. And I cannot wait to get playoff football back here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, they're in playoff mode, and I hope and I believe that they are going to show up to this game fully ready to go, fully prepared, hopefully, and be ready to play against the Detroit Lions. So with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.